This is a real brief AM Dynasty Live. Just running through Bay Area, running my business right now. I thought I'd do it live real quick. It is election night. The big 4 years after a pandemic. Everybody think where they were years ago. Think what you were doing 4 years ago. I can certainly think what I was doing as the recognized president of the United States. Defeated Donald Trump. Here we are 4 years later. At that time, he announced as vice president Kamala Harris, right here from the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, where I'm at on the freeway right now, driving on the freeway in San Francisco, California zone, Kamala Harris. And since that time, a lot of things have happened. We've gone through, obviously, worldwide shutdown and everything. Is these freeways, as you can see, it's back packed again. Everything's back opened up once again. We are now knee deep in the back to the new normal. And it is actually election night here again 4 years later with the two candidates. Joe Biden, from what I hear, stepped aside, and now it's between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris for the presidency tonight. During this time, apparently, I've heard, I'm sure you guys have heard, obviously Donald Trump got shot in the ear, as well as just a multitude of events during this election campaign season and year. And here we are, we're making it to election night. Who do you guys think is going to win this election? Who's going to win the election for the presidency this time around? And I know it's an irrelevant subject, but I actually wonder who's going to be the vice president of whoever wins this year. Probably somebody I never heard of, as I don't follow much politics nowadays. But who is going to win the presidency this year? What do you guys think out there? I'm driving, so I can't look in the chat. But be checking this on the replay. I'm sure it'll be after the election. So we're just throwing out right here at election night my thoughts on the matter. I don't know who's going to win, obviously. But I've been thinking for the last 4 years that probably, of course, I don't know, but I would suggest maybe it'll be Donald Trump. He's got shot in the ear, and he seems to be in my neck of the woods. I've happened to notice a lot of people who are here talking about voting have been for Donald Trump. So I haven't heard just to hear a couple of people in my world who mentioned voting or talking about voting for Donald Trump. So I think that's interesting. Again, I have no idea who's going to win, and I like fly out the election. Tell me who were you voting for? Were you going to vote? Who are you going to vote for? Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to win? Or if you're checking this out after the election, who did you think was going to win? Gotta say that it's been an interesting season. It's actually been a even more interesting last 4 years. Here recently, the Democrats put out all the stars. I've seen Beyonce perform at the Kamala Harris rally, as well as numerous other performances and cameos from Hollywood's elite. Haven't heard much of an agenda on the table, especially as it relates to black people. I know reparations is what I've been interested to see how that was going to play out. So far here in the great state of California, there's been a lot of reparations talks on the table. Haven't heard anything from any candidates going for that, or for that it hasn't seemed to me from the periphery been a significant push for reparations for Black people. So I think a person with my mindset, reparations will probably be at the top of the list. Right? It does remind me of a joke of Dave Chappelle, where Dave Chappelle says something to the degree of poor whites voting for Trump, and actually Trump is probably more for a person like Dave Chappelle than poor whites, because Donald Trump supports the rich, reportedly. So that joke by Dave Chappelle, I remember that at this time right now, especially for myself, a small business owner with a business, paying a tremendous amount of taxes on my business, employee tax, workers' compensation, insurance, and just a whole host of constant fees, sexual harassment training classes, and all kinds of stuff here in the state of California when you have employees and things of that nature. Talking to another business owner, and he was saying that the taxes that we have to pay as business owners or small businesses is just wild, insane, and he's trying to turn a lot of his workers into contractors, which actually, when he said that, it reminded me of back a while ago when George Bush was in office and the whole privatization thing, and everybody gets to be in business for themselves, so the corporation doesn't have to pay necessarily for the health care benefits, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, and things like that for your workers. You just make them contractors, and they don't have to. So those in a higher tax bracket, I could see how they might won't necessarily want to go here in California for, even though we're talking presidential politics, but the Democratic agenda per se. I also do have a friend who is down south in the red state, Atlanta to be exact, and we speak often about the differences in Atlanta between Atlanta and California as far as the politics. In California, it's not really frowned on as much for people that are on welfare and government subsidies, subsidized income, housing, and things of that nature. Whereas she tells me back down south, they frown on anybody, quote, leaning on the government, leaning on the taxpayers, things of that type of nature. So I just think it's interesting right now as far as who the people are. Again, I haven't heard much feedback. A lot of people kind of their politics to their chest. And I think another thing is interesting too is the whole, from my community, I think it's interesting as far as how in voting in presidential politics in over this last 4 years, and indeed in the course of my lifetime, has been a push to kind of separate the Black families, separate men and women, specifically in our community. And then now, after all that push to media, it's even easier to separate the families, community, marital issues. Matter of fact, the greater majority, the overwhelming majority. And I'm noticing when I listen to my friends, as I'm single and I'm not really necessarily a working guy, I have my childhood friends. You guys all come telling me, our other friends tell me about what he's going through, you're telling me what you're going through. And they say, well, shoot, you're single, you're not quite in this situation. You got like bachelor pad type situation going on. Maybe that's why we all lean on you. But as they all tell me their situations, and, and I say, and I just kind of listen, like, ooh, if I were in a 10, 20, 30-year relationship, I just listen to some of the things that they're going through. And I noticed that the constant theme is finances. Year after the pandemic, a lot of them said during the pandemic, everything got shut down. A lot of the men stopped going to work per se. A lot of the women got jobs, and they just were more interested in they want to of Instagram life. A lot of women nowadays look at social media and see people's highlights because nobody posts their lowlights. They post their highlights, so they get to look at their people's resume and highlight reel. And women want that. They look at Desperate Housewives and all those type of things. And they want a guy that's living like that, not a regular guy. And my friends are doing great financially. A lot of them, even if they aren't working or this or that, but very few of them are. Most of them are homeowners. Most of them have some type of savings and things of that nature. And yet, still, the woman's not satisfied for whatever reason, a variety of reasons. But I notice, still, even with that, finances is the overwhelming thing. Even with my friends that own houses and things of that nature, the women in relationships they're in, they want more. I said all that to say here in this election season, after our society, our American society, has specifically helped separate and divide the family unit, specifically in my community, is interesting now with a Kamala Harris running for president. And on one side of the fence, the Democratic side would say, vote for Kamala Harris. Vote for Kamala Harris. And in our community, um, there's been pushback against that. Just the Democratic agenda in general. I see that the Democratic platform is really um, catering to black people as usual, and specifically black men. That's interesting. And a lot of black men that I know personally, as well as I see on social media, are kind of caping for Donald Trump. Now, I find that pretty darn interesting. I know personally know people that say I'm going out to vote today. I'm voting for Donald Trump, or people that just express that who didn't necessarily say they were going to vote, but they say that they're Trump supporters, and they articulated why. Hey man, I'm a longshoreman. I make good money, not with all these extra taxes and all this other type of stuff, and I'm just listening. I think that's interesting. We come this far down the road, and to hear the perspective of people, brothers and sisters and people in my community, all the different things that's being said here this far down the line, and specifically 4 years later. Um, even when I listen to social media, they say, hey, 4 years ago, the economy was doing great thanks to Trump. And I think to myself, well, it was that little thing of a worldwide shutdown. Not that I'm blaming anybody, but there was that little thing of a worldwide shutdown. So people got to issuing all kind of checks. And as a matter of fact, even during that time period, 4 years later, I see that a lot of homes have been, I don't want to say altered because of that, impacted negatively because of that, but I don't really see how the global shutdown and people receiving checks has renewed and restored a lot of families, especially in my community, our community. I haven't necessarily seen that. I know specific situations where women feel even more empowered, and they're now breadwinners, and now they want a guy who, like I said, is looking like Desperate Housewives or TikTok or social media, Instagram, where you're seeing people highlights. They want a guy with more money, just more of everything. So I just think it's very, very interesting. And I think my prognostication, I'm going to say that I think Donald Trump's going to win the election. Why? I don't know. Of course, I don't know. I don't have any facts. I don't really, unlike what we used to do here on Any of Dynasty, I discuss very little politics. Probably will a little bit more going forward. But after some of the experiences I've had over the last 40 years, I don't really talk about politics as much. But considering it's election day, and I have been meaning to get back into a little bit of topics about politics, now is probably a good time as any to kind of give my take on what's happened over the last 4 years and what does that leave us at this point here on election night. What's the vibe from my community that I hear from my perspective, and who do I think is going to win? I'll say I think in closing it's gonna probably be Donald Trump. I've heard Kamala get bashed uh, 12 ways from Sunday, just so many different ways. She's been just bashed. Both of them have been bashed, as everyone gets bashed during election year. But there's been a specific type of, I don't know, I can't really describe it, but from looking at, I have been observing a lot of social media, and it seems to me, um, even when I see the pandering that's going on, it seems like um, people are going to be pushing for Kamala. I will say, lastly, another thing too is it's interesting how we're in a time where the presidential candidate Trump gets shot in the ear, and I haven't heard anybody call this shooter a thug. And so I just think it's interesting who they put these labels on when you're at a time where a presidential candidate gets shot in the ear, and they, oh, this guy was had some mental issues, but he's not called some of the things that he'd be called if he was of a different persuasion. He's not called a thug. He's not called. Those people always do that kind of thing. They have a high capacity to be involved in these type of things. So I just think it's, again, interesting how America does that when they put labels on people, for other people, misguided labels. And for some people or some groups of people, they don't give these labels to, even if these groups of people are, thugs are shooting presidents or candidates in the ear during campaign rallies with thousands of people in attendance. So I just think it's some weird times we're living in. I just think the politics have gone off the charts, as it always will, continue to get more and more. And with that, hey, I think that Trump will probably win. We'll kick back and see who's going to win. Going to be Trump. That's my take for right now. Again, I don't have inside information. I don't know. I'm just kind of giving you my hypothesis on the matter. Both the candidates, I'm sure, is the best of job that they could do. In the words of Rasheed Wallace, both teams played hard, and I wish them both to get what they deserve. So, with that, that's just my take on the matter. I just wanted to give a brief take on my thoughts on the election. And with that, we're gonna get out of here. I'll check back in with you guys. Yeah, leave your comments in the comment section. Tell me what you think. Who's gonna win? Who you're voting for? Who you thought was gonna win if it responded after this in the AM Dynasty comments. So with that, I'm gonna get out of here and we'll see what's gonna happen, folks. Thanks for joining us again on another AM Dynasty podcast. And we'll see what happens. I'll catch